Everything's in motion. This is one day at a time. Everyone has cancer, and this is where I battle mine. What's up, everyone? This is Cody from the Quarter Cows. I decided I wanted to start my own podcast here. We're still going to be doing the Quarter Cow stuff, but there's been something that's really been near and dear to my heart for the longest time, and that is testimony. That is telling my story and telling the things that I've been through. And this show is where I'm going to do that. This show is going to be my baby, and hopefully, if you guys like it, you know, we're gonna keep doing it. We're gonna keep going, and we're not gonna stop. But this show right here, don't get worried. Okay, this show is called Everyone Has Cancer, but not everyone has cancer. So let me explain the title a little bit. In 2001, I was diagnosed with ALL, which stands for acute lymphoblastic leukemia. So yeah, it was the big C. It was the big blood cancer. I was 16? Yeah, 16 at the time. And with that, I have been through a lot of stuff, obviously, with going through cancer. It wasn't really that great of a fun time, but, we're going to dig into that here in a little bit. We're going to get started. But also, in 2005, I was re-diagnosed. I relapsed, as it were. And, so I didn't spend very many years, I guess, clean and healthy before, 2005 hit, and I had to face this horrible monster all over again in my life. Something that I've been told throughout all of it, through family, friends, over the years, is how strong I was. Oh, you're such an inspiration. You have so much courage. You have so much strength. I don't know how you got through this horrible thing. Even to the point of some people would just end up with, like, say it's winter, would just have some kind of winter cold or like strep throat, and I'd be like, oh man, I'm sorry you're not feeling well, and they'd be like, well, it's nothing compared to what you went through. Like, yeah, but I'm sure it's still pretty bad. But yeah, heard that kind of all my life, is how strong I was and courageous, and I didn't really see it. And I think just kind of when you're in the midst of it, you don't really see that what you're doing can inspire someone else, that your story can do something for someone else. Because I'll tell you what I did through all that, and what my iron will and what my strength and my courage meant. It meant a lot of sitting down, a lot of laying down, a lot of crying, wishing I didn't have to face this horrible disease, and a lot of throwing up. So, I mean, that's really the two things that happened. I cried and threw up in no particular order. Some nights one way, some nights another. But one comment that really stuck out to me with some friends is when some people would say, I don't know how you went through that. I don't know how you did it. How did you get through that? And what I would always end up saying is I don't know. I just did. There was never a moment where I looked at a doctor and they said, hey, you're going to die. And I said, let me tell you something, mister. I'm going to prevail. I have strength and I have resolve. No, I was terrified. The first time around, honestly, I wasn't as terrified because there's no reason to be terrified. Like, I didn't know exactly what I was, getting into. So before I knew it, it was there. But then I have, some friends that would come to me. Like I've had, some female friends come to me and say, oh, I have cervical cancer. What's the best advice you could give? And I'd say, I don't know. I don't have cervicals. So it's probably not the same thing. And I'd have some friends, I get this one girl that I know. I won't name names. Sometimes I'm going to name names on this show, but it's not going to be an all-around occurrence because, a lot of the show I haven't really checked with the people that I'm going to be discussing, and, maybe some of these people don't want their stuff aired out. So I don't know. I'll call her Nisa. Now, Nisa had a horrible time in her life just not too long ago, maybe a couple years ago, where she was in a domestic abuse, like basically was in with her boyfriend, who was a guy that like started out great, and he ended up beating the living stuffing out of her and leaving her for dead, quite literally. Beat her. I mean, we're gonna get to the happy stuff. We're gonna get to the positive stuff, but just showing you an example. This girl that I knew, Nisa, as we're gonna call her, was beaten within an inch of her life with a frying pan. She also, they had a history of domestic abuse, and she had silent alarms all kind of throughout the house, and one particular on the wall. And he walked around smashing all the phones and smashing all the alarms that he could find. And yeah, you know, like I remember seeing pictures of her right after and talking to her. She wouldn't allow friends to come up to the hospital in fear that this gentleman that she was that had done all this to her would somehow find her. This girl kind of ended up blowing up, like she in Broken Arrow, like everyone kind of knew about her, and she ended up on the news. And because of, you know, being on the news, the assailant ended up giving himself up to the police, and she was left with her body broken, her hands broken. They kind of had to stitch her hands back together. But if you saw her now, she's beautiful. She is gorgeous. She's an angel. And I'm sitting there looking at her saying, how the hell did you find the willpower and the strength to go through that? You know, how did you not give in to the sorrow, to the tragedy of it? You know? And she ended up telling me the same thing that I've told people about cancer, is I don't know how I did it. I just did it. You know? You don't decide you're strong and then show strength. You know you're weak, and then through all of it, you end up finding out that you're kind of strong. You know? But yeah, so, and that's when it dawned on me that where I had cancer, she had domestic abuse. Where I had cancer, someone else would have an alcohol or a pill or just some kind of drug problem that they just cannot get through. I think everyone has this big, horrible thing in their life that is totally unique to them, that is something that no one else should ever face, but they are faced with it, that no one else can give them advice on. They can't even go through it with them, in a sense. They can't go with them they can go be there for them, but they can't go through them with them, move by move, inch by inch, pain for pain. And these are the things that sometimes we just have to figure out for ourselves. And it's in these things that we grow strong. That it's kind of hokey, but it's a chunk of iron that goes through the fire that comes out to be the sword of the king. And we all have something in our life that we are trying to get through, went through, or have not faced yet, that is going to define us as a person. And what it's going to do is make us the best version of ourselves. It's going to make us who we are today. I can sit here and tell you right now that I was born May 2nd, 1984, but I wasn't truly born until after the cancer, after leukemia. There is life after horrible tragedy. And you may be angry at God, you may be angry at the universe for like the things that you have gone through and the problems that you've been faced with. And you might feel alone in that, but it's in that aspect I need to tell you that you are not alone, that everyone has that thing in their life that they are going to overcome, that they are going to get through, that is completely unique to them, that they're going to have to just get away from friends and family and go through it and then come out the other side and then get back, to normalcy. One of my favorite quotes is in that movie Tombstone. There is no normal life. There's just life. And we end up going through this thing, and I'll be honest, the first time I went through it, I sat there and wondered, like, why me? I was, I'm Christian, and, and I've always been Christian, so I used to think that God was angry at me. I remember thinking that maybe this all happened to me because of my life wasn't going the way it was supposed to be going, the way, and God punished me. And maybe if I was a good enough person, this will never happen again, which is a bargaining chip. So basically I was asking God to not get mad at me and give me cancer again, which is no way to live. You go through so many raw emotions and you go through so many aspects, and it's not like the 5 stages of grief isn't like you go through this, then you go through this, then you go through that, and then you're done. We're talking years, where it's just something you have to overcome all yourself. And once you do, the beautiful thing about it is you are going to come out the best version of you, not the best version of a person, but you're going to come out the best version of you, listener. Whoever is listening to this, you may be thinking, yeah, I did have something horrible in my life happen, and I don't know why it happened to me. My father abused me. My mother was an alcoholic, or, I got really sick, or, had a domestic abuse issue, or, something like that. And you're still wondering why it all happened to you. Well, you can give it meaning right now. And that is what I am here doing for myself. I am giving it meaning because I can talk to anyone that has ever had cancer since then. I'm completely clean, well, I don't know about that, but completely healthy and completely ready to, live without cancer. And I've been living without cancer for 10 plus years now. I am over my decade mark, and I still have people come up to me. I have friends from high school come up and treat me like a Fabergé egg. Just come up and be like, "Hey, are you doing okay? Are you doing all right, little guy?" Be like, "Yeah, dude, I'm 33 years old, 215 pounds. I'm doing all right." But one thing that I'll have come up to me is anytime someone has some kind of illness, "Hey, can you come talk to my mom? She has a tumor." Or "Can you come talk to my sister? She just found out she had cancer." "Can you come talk to my brother?" I have met people that have had cancer and come out the other side of it. One guy that I used to work with, his name is Cash. I think we're okay there. He ended up having the same doctors and everything as me. And I made friends. I got this buddy named Ben who has a one-up on me because he did all the stuff that I did, but he's in a wheelchair and, has been wheelchair-bound his whole life. But yeah, I met him in the hospital just from telling my story, just from going up there. You have no idea what it can do for someone. Here's the meaning in it, listener. Here's the meaning in it. You turn around and you look for someone who is going into the same fire that you just came out the other side of. And you say, "Hey, look at me. I got scars. I'm beat up, but I'm alive. I'm here." And so just showing someone, "Hey, here's evidence of life on the other side of what you went through." I remember talking to my brother. My brother had a divorce. And he didn't know what he was going to do with himself. And, look at that. I mean, some people will just hear that right there and be like, "Oh, which divorce is this? Oh, it's his first one?" Yeah, the first one's always the roughest, because you've come out the other side of it. You've come out and said, "Hey, yeah, but there's life after it. There's life after that. That is not the end of life. As long as you are still breathing, it is not the end of life. It is the beginning of something else entirely." Now, you're going to go through some horrible times, yes, but you're going to be able to pull someone else out, and that's why you go through it. So, and that's kind of what this show is going to be about. It's really just inspirational, Sometimes it's going to get a little dark, and to be honest, sometimes it's going to get a little bit grosser. Like they kind of like, there's moments in movies when you see like a child being born as this big beautiful, happening and everything, but there's some parts that kind of leave out because it's just a little. It kind of takes away from like the beauty of it. Like it can't be happy all the time. If it was happy all the time, then it wouldn't be a struggle. It wouldn't define us for who we are. So, but yeah, so I'm gonna try to post one of these once a week. Gonna try and keep it down to 30 minutes at first, maybe jump it up to 45, because we're already at a 15-minute mark right now. But at the end of it, what I just want is, okay, let me double back before I say that part. I was diagnosed with a children's version of leukemia, yes. So to me, it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but, you can say that about everything. It could have been a lot worse. No matter what you are going through, you did not get the worst version of it, I promise you. But yeah, I was diagnosed with it when I was 16. So being that I was pediatric cancer, but I was a 16-year-old, they didn't know whether to treat me as an adult or treat me as a child. So I some weeks I would be in adult oncology, and sometimes I would be in pediatric oncology. And I kind of preferred the treatment over pediatric, especially at, the weakness that I was. But I was alone. At the time, we couldn't find anyone my age that has come out the other side of it. And I talked to the therapist there and said, hey, can I just get in contact with someone that's my age that has been through this? Not someone who went through it when they were 2 and, don't remember it and, remember their mom crying once. And, I'm not, again, not to demoralize that. Those kids are the strongest kids I have ever met. I got, and again, we will get into that later. I got some names here. I got some kids that were a big inspiration in my life that, even mentioning them, I'm kind of welling up with tears right now. But I was alone. And, I didn't really have someone that was there for me at the same age. So what I'm trying to do here is to show you that someone knows. Someone, maybe it's you that knows, but somebody out there understands what you're going through, has been through it, or is going through it at a different pace, at a different strength, or at a different speed. And you are not alone. We are everywhere. So you don't ever hold back in telling your story. So that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to tell you my story so you can not feel alone in what you're going through. That's what I want to do. I'm here to tell you that if you hear my voice right this second, then you are strong and you will get through it. And if you've gotten through it, hell yes. Then you are strength incarnate. You are courage. You are faith. I want you to study that for a second. You become hope. You become faith. Because someone can look at you and say, okay, well, they can do it. And you're going to have some days where you don't want hope. You want it to be over. One of the things, I've said this a million times, I know you haven't heard me say it maybe, but one thing that I've always despised hearing, especially in the hospital, is, it's bad today, but it's going to be good tomorrow. I don't give 2 flying craps about tomorrow. I'm worried about the pain and the insanity and the depression that I'm in now, because everyone's living their life and I don't get to, So there was a lot of loneliness, but once I got back to everyone, it's like coming back from a war, man. You don't come back the same, and you got some stories out there, and what you could say not just putting on your best Tony Robbins and being like, here's how you get through life. I'm not here to tell you how to do it because I don't have all the answers myself. What I'm here to do is just to tell my story and to tell you that you are strong enough. You know, you're going to feel weak the entire time, and you are never, ever going to see yourself as a hero, but others will. I've had so many people tell me I'm a hero. I don't see it. I see a guy who cried and went through like the weakest version of cancer. And even saying that, some people might be like, the weakest version of cancer? That's like saying the softest version of a shotgun blast, you know? But yeah, I also want to thank the Court of Cows. And yes, I'm going to go ahead and do a shameless plug for my own brand. But I share that brand with some of the best guys on this planet. All of which, ironically, I know way past the cancer stories, so this is going to be kind of all my own. But the Court of Cows has given me this opportunity to start this show fresh and to start my own show. So I'm really excited about that. If you don't know what the Court of Cows is, that's our YouTube page. Me and a bunch of guys have that. We talk about comic books. We talk about video games. We do unboxings. We do a lot of stuff. It started as a comic book podcast, but, you know, we're kind of branching out to that. And, you know, there's a lot of cool stuff happening, especially in Batman Metal. Oh, my God. You know, just the current Batman runs in just the current DC. If you haven't picked up any of DC Rebirth, you need to. It doesn't matter what you pick up. The answer is yes. If you should get it, if it says Rebirth on it, get it. And, you know, Marvel's doing some cool stuff, too, from what I hear. So yeah, that's okay. So let's see what we got on the list here. I hope you guys enjoyed that theme song. That's from a band that I was actually in quite a few years ago. And again, we will get to that later. Spent, you know, the better part of 10 years in the local music scene, mostly metal, but one band I was in was a solid rock band, which is called Critical Nonsense. Hadn't been a band in years, but, you know, I talked to those guys, had some of the old recordings, so they were gracious enough to let me use their stuff. And you don't have to hear my gross singing vocals over it. But yeah, you'll be able to find this show on YouTube through the Court of Cows. I may set up a YouTube page. I may set up a Facebook page. This is really just kind of early on, and I haven't really done much of anything. I'm kind of doing everything on this show. So yeah, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But yeah, it's more than likely going to be through Facebook.com/Court of Cows. Through that, you can find our YouTube page. You can check us out on Instagram at Court of Cows, I believe. And yeah, I'll be setting all that up for myself and right here at Everyone Has Cancer. But yeah, so let's go ahead and I'm going to start digging into it a little bit. I don't have much time today because obviously, you know, I just wanted to spend this time to kind of tell you guys what it's going to be about. But basically, it's going to be my story. Sometimes it's going to be hard to hear. Sometimes it may not be that happy of a story. But, you know, I consider myself a very upbeat guy and a very positive guy. Kind of have to for the stuff I've been through in my life. So, yeah, I'm going to be trying to keep it up to beat. I'll try to keep it as smooth as possible. But you guys got to understand that this is all going to be like shooting from the hip. You know, so, but I really hope you enjoy this show. Anyways, so let's go ahead, and this time we're usually going to put 30 minutes on the clock. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So we're going to put 30 minutes on the clock and start talking about my story from start to finish. So here we go. Now, I guess if I'm going to just cut forward to get to the good stuff, in 9th grade, you know, I'll go back a little bit more. as a kid, I was always kind of picked on. I don't know if you know this about me, but I am redheaded, which makes me a ginger, which makes me liable for all sorts of jokes. But, as a kid, I was an easy target. We're talking buck tooth, red hair, bowl haircut, looked like Problem Child. I know that's kind of showing my age, but looked identical to Problem Child. And, so, yeah, I was kind of an easy target. I got bullied a lot. And this is way before, bully beatdown and bully awareness and bully safety or whatever they want to call it these days. Back then it was just kids being kids. You just worked it out, And, but it wasn't until high school that I realized that, I was kind of an outcast and, ended up, and this is early 2000s, man. So I was a goth kid and found out that I had a whole group of goth friends. So I grew up in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. And, so it was a bunch of goth kids. We're talking Jinkos, ball necklaces, black nail polish, and, all the Marilyn Manson and, corn you could choke down. Orgy was my favorite. I don't know. I just loved that band. I still love that band. They haven't put a good album out in a very long time, and probably because they're old, just like I am. But no, it was in that time that I really got... a strong group of friends, like-minded individuals. And, we were all just a big group of black sheep. And we partied like rock stars. We would go out, sneak out, vandalize stuff. We'd go out and, steal stuff and, just be bad kids, so not really like a beacon of hope just yet. My big claim to fame was that even though I was a goth kid, always was a Christian, man. So like, it never did any kind of upside down crosses, no pentagrams. Marilyn Manson, which is kind of like off limits. Like, there was some stuff I would listen to, with headphones on or like the radio turned way down. But, there are some things that Antichrist Superstar, no thank you. I would kind of turn my nose up at that one and was just like, no, I'm not getting into all that. But, I kind of wanted to be just a Christian goth kid. That even became a thing later on. But, but I had a great group of guys that... one of my buddies, guy named Chris, two Chris's actually. One was Chris, and then the other one was, we just called him Chancho, for obvious reasons, if you know the guy. And my buddy Matt, his brother Marty, Dwayne, and yeah, just a bunch of guys just walking around in trench coats. And, once Columbine happened, trench coats weren't allowed anymore. So it's just a bunch of like long sleeve shirts, or no, not long sleeve shirt, long sleeve thermal shirts with t-shirts over it. Very, very showing my age there. Jacket tied in the front, holes cut for the thumbs in the sleeves. Yeah, buddy, that was me. And but I had always had one thing that I always ended up happening, even as a kid, was I'd get nosebleeds, and that wasn't a problem. That's actually pretty normal in kids, is to have nosebleeds. Anytime it got like dry outside, or anytime winter hit, anytime I had like a slight cold or anything, I just had what are they, visible blood vessels in my nose that, like, just the slightest touch and my nose would start bleeding. Always controllable. But one thing that did end up happening is, I remember Matt, I stayed the night at his house one night, and I woke up in the middle of the night and my shoulder was killing me. Like, it was an amazing amount of pain, and I couldn't go back to sleep. And then when I finally did go back to sleep, I had a nosebleeds, so I wake up, and to a very embarrassing sight is, my shoulder is aching, throbbing, in horrible, horrible pain. and I got blood all over the pillow. So it looks like I was just murdered overnight. So I'm just walking around holding my shoulder with this bloody pillow. I wake up at like 6 in the morning before anyone wakes up, and Matt's mother, God bless her, is, I take the pillow down thinking I'm just gonna jack this pillow. And she takes it from me, asks me if I'm okay, and then, I ask her to just please don't tell anyone about this, because, I'm just gonna go home. Because this was in the same neighborhood, and, so she was a sweetheart, and, took the pillow from me and said, secret safe with her, and ended up walking home. And as I'm walking home, man, I'm having to stop and sit down because I'm starting, my vision's getting blotchy, I'm having a hard time keeping to, because just with this overwhelming pain in my shoulder, so I finally get home and get, a few Tylenol in me, and just ended up crashing out on the couch. And then, from then on, I just kind of, stayed on the couch, because for some reason I had put that together, okay, well, if I can sleep on the couch and it doesn't bug my shoulder, so, and it was my left shoulder, so I started wearing a sling, just thinking I had just, I thought I had just dislocated it, because my brother had dislocated his shoulder at a younger age. And, they popped it back in. He wore a sling for a couple weeks, and we were good. And so, yeah, I thought it was something similar. So, I didn't really worry about it. And, so just obviously ended up sleeping on my right side, and the pain would just get down to a dull roar. And, but it was constantly there. And then I couldn't sleep on my right side because now my right shoulder was hurting really bad. And I again grew up Christian, so the televangelists, were always on one TV in the house. So that's something that I kind of struggle with today. Not Christianity, very, very, very faithful actually, and very much believe in God and all that, and that's not the overall message here, but again, we'll get into all that. But as the plane lands on my house, but yeah, so and my dad was a big believer in all that, so in the televangelist stuff. So anytime there was a preacher up there calling out, hey, put your hand on the TV for healing for shoulders, or put them for knees if you're having a heart problem, if you're going through an alcohol abuse problem, put your hand on the TV and, be healed. So I got, my mom and dad calling me down to, hey, come here. They're calling out shoulders. You need to put your hand on the TV. So, I'd throw my elbow up there because I couldn't raise my hand because my shoulder hurt too bad. But I would just put a body part on it. And there was a few times there that I would just start crying, because the pain was so bad that now TVs at this point in my life were more wood than TV, just a big tabletop with a TV just happened to be built into it, if you remember those, with the big dial on it, the big, you couldn't switch it, you do the ding, 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 it just shake the whole damn house. And, after that, we had the cable box that you'd sit there and flip the channels and but again, showing my age. But yeah, I'm sitting here all against this gigantic wood TV, this big bulbousy thing given, so the next time, all that really happened was the next time I touched a doorknob, it shocked me. And, but I did believe in the power of healing and faith and all that, and I prayed for this pain to go away. But, it would go away and then show up somewhere else. And, finally my shoulders started subsiding. And we get into my back. And this is where, and this is over the period of a good few months. 6, 7, 8 months, something like that. And I started having just major back problems. We would go out, as a group, and the guys would go out. We had this pool hall we went to every Friday, man, and Corner Pocket. Loved that place. I actually lived not too far from where that place used to be, but I think it's a different bar now. But yeah, it was a pool hall, and that's where all the cool kids hung out. You know, like that's where all the rejects went every single Friday. That's what we did. Went out there, you know, and we'd find some girls, and this is okay. I'm like full on into the goth days, and kind of did the whole ugly duckly thing as a kid. Had this long hair and shaved on the sides, but long hair, and just dressed in all black. And I would find a girl that was also dressed in all black and end up like kissing her and stuff like that, because also this is 15, 16, so I mean like kind of teenager, sexual awakening kind of thing. So and a lot of it was just kissing, so and yeah, we used to, I don't know, we just had a lot of fun. And but I started having these back problems, and there was a gas station that was in the same parking lot. So we'd either walk up there with an adult and have the oldest kid among us buy cigarettes and go smoke some cigarettes, and or we'd one of our buddies would have gotten some alcohol, and we'd be just drinking some like Southern Comfort or Everclear, and just in a Quick Trip cup. And, just hanging out, just being dumb kids, man, just being just punk rock kids. And, but yeah, I had a normal routine of going to that gas station and buying that little packet of pain pills, the little packet of 2 pain pills, because that would at least get me through the night, because, there'd be some nights that I would just kind of be doubled over. And really, a bunch of energetic kids, like I said. So there'd be sometimes if like someone jumped up on you, like, have you ever been walking and one of your friends just decides, piggyback ride, and just jumps on your back? That used to, happen a lot, when I was a teenager. So anytime that happened, that would crush me, and I'd be down for a week, so, and I remember one of my buddies trying that, and I just fell flat on my face, and they were like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry, I didn't know, you were standing on a house of cards." So, yeah, I just kind of became the kid that, you just don't roughhouse with, because, I just always ended up with like some kind of pain, some kind of problem. All throughout this, I'm, going to my doctor, and he's telling me I'm just having growing pains, just having a lot of growing pains is, what he called it. And I thought it was the strangest thing, because I'd be like, dude, I don't, none of my other friends are like, oh yeah, I had the shoulder problem. Turned out my shoulder was, my arm was going to grow like 15 feet. Like, no, dude, like the growing pains are not going to be this bad, Like, and I've heard of growth spurts, and I've seen those, and I've heard of, growing pains is a thing. But at the time, all I knew about it was, growing pains was the kid that was trying to get with, the growing pains show. But yeah, and all the while I'm having, just kind of random nosebleeds, stuff like that. And then we got into this horrible time. I remember waking up one morning, and I woke up feeling like someone had just punched me in the gut, and then like just stabbed me in the spine. And I couldn't, if I sat up, it took me a little bit to actually get to like a prone position. And when I did sit up, it was breathtaking. Like, I literally could not breathe for a good few seconds, just from the pain, just the immeasurable amount of pain that would shoot up my back. And so, we go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, well, looks like growing pains. And he decides he wants to get an x-ray, and that's the most horrible thing, because basically he wants me to lay flat, and to me at the time was basically someone saying, hey, I need you to lay flat on this table and then get back up and, and come back into the room. That was how I heard that and how it sounded to me was, "Hey, I want you to take this rusty nail and I want you to shove it into your toe as slowly as possible. And while you're doing that, we're just gonna go ahead and pluck out all your hairs." it it's horrible and annoying, and you can't imagine it. Like, hey, I'm just gonna take this drill and put it through your fingernail. So and yeah, just do all that, and then I'll be back in the room. So I remember going into the room and laying on the table, getting my X-ray, and then I'm trying to kind of like basically have a wheelchair next to the table. I'm trying to just pour myself into this wheelchair, and the doctor like grabs my hand and he's like, "Oh, you need to help up," and sits me up. And he sees like the pain I'm talking about. He sees it on my face. He sees me not breathing. And this dude is a family doctor. So he just pulls out a stethoscope and just checks my heart. And then just walks out of the room just puzzled as hell. So, I mean, this is way above his, just a family pediatric doctor. So, I mean, this is kind of above him. Like, it wasn't his fault. He didn't, I don't think he really knew what he was dealing with. None of us did. And you'll hear similar cancer stories. Like, no one really knows at the beginning. They just know all these, like, random occurrences. Little battles going on inside the body that just don't make any sense. And this all came down to, we were big. We went to Victory Christian Center every Sunday. Went to church. One thing they were doing big was Victory Kids. They were building this facility for at-risk kids, and and basically just a church group for children by children kind of thing. And that was the big talk of the town. That we were kind of active members of the church, even though I was a bad kid. And they kept talking about the Victory Christian Center and like the Victory Kids. And we were, that's where all the tithing and offering was going to, was to build this facility. This was basically like the Christian version of the Y. Like the way Christian version of the Y. And then we get into, within like a couple weeks, the reason, I'll get back to that in a sec, but we get into like a couple of weeks before the grand opening ceremony. And I, went out to a buddy's house, and we had this big party. We just, one of our friends, I don't even remember which friend it was, but it was one of our friends that had a cool mom, quote unquote, that would just kind of go upstairs, and didn't matter if all these kids were at the house drinking and all that stuff. So, Matt, he was my best friend at the time, and early on we're just getting drunk, getting loaded, just having a blast, just really unwinding. And being drunk idiots, we decided to play Ring Around the Rosie. So we grab each other's hand and start ring around the rosy, pocket pull a posy, ashes, ashes. We all fall down, and we let each other go and just fall in a drunken stupor, and we hit the ground. He's laughing his ass off, and I am in a pain that I am drunk, but I cannot move. I can't feel the pain because I'm loaded at the time, and but I can't move. Like, I can't feel my feet. I go to kind of sit up, my body won't sit up. I can't get my arms underneath me. I cannot move. And luckily there was, in the room we were in, there was a mattress on the floor. And so I kind of just commando crawled over and laid on the mattress, and it was there I stayed for the entire party. Like, the whole party was just kicking, and I was just here, like, trying my best to walk, And I just, I guess in the wrestling world they call it a stinger. I found that out like last week. But yeah, it was just temporary paralysis. And my girlfriend at the time, Becca, she ended up showing up at the party way late, and she ended up just sitting with me, and we just ended up talking right there. And she was like, "Okay, why don't you turn over here and look at me so we can talk?" And I'm like, "Well, you're gonna have to turn me because I can't move, you know." And then finally comes time to go, so I'm finally able to stand, and it takes a bunch of friends to help me up, but I stand up. I can't even stand all the way up. Like I'm standing. I'm standing like I'm trying to just let out the biggest fart in the world, to be honest. I got my fingers down to my toes. I'm holding my thighs and basically just kind of like throwing myself over, basically just tabletop on my back. You could have set a drink on there and just watch your drink walk away. But yeah, after that, I spent a week laying on the couch. At this point in my life, we lived in a 2-story house. My room was upstairs. I hadn't seen my room in probably about a month because I couldn't get off the couch. I slept on the couch. Once in a while when I felt really, really good about myself, I'd be able to work my way upstairs. I'd have to kind of crawl up there. But all the while still trying to be like, oh, no, it's nothing. And I didn't really... now you're thinking, like, to what end? Like, what this all had to be going somewhere. Why didn't you think about that? Like, no, I thought honestly, I thought one day I was just going to wake up and it was all going to be behind me. And if it was growing pains, I was going to be 10 feet tall. So, but we finally, that kind of gets behind me. At this point, I'm wearing one of those, like, braces that you wear that you used to wear for work. I haven't seen them in a while, but these like back support things, and I had to get up just right when I was going back and forth like in class and stuff like that because I couldn't move around a lot, and without just getting the wind knocked out of me. Yeah, seriously, just out of nowhere, I would just like if I laughed too hard, if a friend gave me a pat on the back. If I sat in the chair a little too hard, if I got up a little too quick, the wind would just be snatched out of me. That's just the best way I can describe it. It was just, and I would just be sitting there, just just for a little bit, and then I would be able to come to, and then I'd work my way to class, and I'd sit there and look at the chair like, all right, old nemesis, let's try this again, and. Then we get to the grand opening of the Victory Christian Center for kids, like the Victory Kids thing. And we go. It's supposed to be this big, awesome thing. Right when we get there, we walk up. They start giving orientation about, okay, here's where we're going to do this. Here's where we're going to do that. They do the big, the big scissors on the ribbon, like the grand opening. The news is there and all this stuff. And so we stand there. I don't even remember the place. Like I think I walked over to like just kind of like just a bunch of bleachers and sit down at the bleachers, and my nose starts bleeding, like just for no reason. It just starts bleeding, and this is, both nostrils. It's going pretty good, and just. More than it should. Like, you say, your kid says, oh, I got a nosebleed. You just grab out a Kleenex. I'm needing like a handful of Kleenexes. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go back to the truck and lay in the back and, just kind of wait for, you just lay back. I know it's you shouldn't do this now if you ever get a nosebleed. Don't lay back because then you're just going to end up with a bunch of blood going down your throat and it's just taste horrible. Just lean your head forward, clot it, and you're good. But this one, I ended up, before knowing that, laying down, waiting for this thing to quit, waiting for my nose to quit bleeding, holding pressure on it. My mom is coming back and forth with ice packs, and and it's just not stopping. And so finally we decide to leave. And I feel horrible because, this was the moment that, we were all waiting for. That we were all, like, praying about was me getting better and this center being opened. And, so they take one look back at me and they say, okay, well, let's go ahead and go to the hospital. And I don't know why someone said it until I saw myself. And, I kind of saw myself and I was very, very pale, like extremely pale. And so, we go to the hospital and they're like, oh, I got a nosebleed. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. So this is where it's going to get kind of gross, guys. Very gross, actually. So I feel something in the back of my throat when I get back up, and it starts choking me, like actively choking me, and I'm like, what is going on? And as I'm feeling it, I end up just reaching into the back of my mouth and pulling this thing, and I just have this big red matter that's just kind of just this red thickness kind of that I'm able to pull out of my mouth and hold out kind of like a couple inches out of my mouth to where you can actually see it. It looks like a little red hand coming out. And then like it'd slip out of my hand and it'd snap back in my throat and I'd gag. So I mean at this point I'm like like because it's hitting my gag reflex. And everyone starts being like, what is that? And, okay, this part is not for the weak of heart. We only have a couple of those moments where it's going to be not for the weak of heart. But this is number one, and this is moment number one. We'll get to the other one later down the road. But this guy comes in. This doctor comes in and he's just got this big towel and he's like, all right, Cody, here's what I want you to do. I want you to put this over your face and I want you to just blow your nose as hard as you can. And I was like, so you just want me to make a crime scene? Are we going for Evil Dead 2 or, or are we going for it in the bathroom sink? Because that's basically what's about to happen. But, we're kind of going to get to it, the new movie where the whole room gets red, because this is bad and it's not going away. Because this is like a good hour and a half later and the blood is not even close to being done. But, so I blow my nose. And this thing comes halfway out my nose, and this dude pulls it out of my nostril. And I feel it basically like flossing my sinuses. And best way I can describe it, he pulled a big red hot dog out of my nose. Turns out like it was trying to clot, but it would not clot, and it created this gigantic clot in my sinuses that had thickened and worked its way down into my throat and was choking me. But he pulls this like just think of a hot dog. I'm sorry, you'll never be able to think about hot dogs again, but that same length, width, consistency, just a little bit redder, and pulls this thing out of my nose, man, and that was the end of the nosebleed. So, go back for a blood test, and they say I'm anemic. And, so they're like, okay, so yeah, you're a little anemic, so here's what we're going to do. We're just going to keep you overnight. And, so tomorrow you can go home. And I was like, all right, cool. No sweat. Hey, tomorrow's Monday. I get out of school, so no problem. So, yeah, the next day rolls around. We take the blood test. Oh, well, hey, you're the reason, they come in and tell me the reason your blood wouldn't clot and the reason your nosebleed wouldn't stop is because you have very little platelets, so we're going to have to do a blood transfusion. I'm like, all right, cool, hey, it gets me out of school. So Tuesday I wasn't in school. And then they come back and say, okay, well, the reason it's not working is because your diet, or like, it basically had all these different reasons, and, hey, you're going to have to stay an extra day. Hey, and I'd be like, okay, hey, is my blood level back to normal? Am I still anemic? And they'd be like, yeah, you're still anemic. 3 days turned into 4. 4 days turned into 6. And 6 turned into 2 weeks. 2 weeks I ended up sitting there before I had the worst night that I could ever have. I'm sitting there watching TV. It's late one night, or Ooh, we are at 30 minutes. That's the timer, guys. So I'll just tell you this. I had sitting there watching TV. My mom is in the room. It's the end of the night. We're just kind of winding down. I start feeling nauseous. And I thought, that's strange. Because through all the pain, through all the hurt, never got nauseous. At the time, I hadn't thrown up in like a good few years. So I was like, wow, I think I'm actually going to throw up. I go to sit up to grab the trash can, and I feel an electric bomb, best way I can describe it, go off. It goes off in the base of my spine, the middle of my spine, and the top of my spine. Just bam, bam, bam. And I fall back in a pain that I can't even describe. Instantly went into shock. I am screaming at the top of my lungs. And this doctor, I don't know how long I was in there just screaming and trying to catch my breath and wondering what the hell was going on, what was happening. And I ended up having this doctor comes rushing in, whips this needle out and pulls down the side of my hip, pulls on the blanket, and that turns me and just shoves it into my hip. And it's it's Demerol. It's wonderful stuff. Not for me, but we'll get on to that later. And but for the time being, the pain subsided and I was okay. And so I stopped and said, okay, what the hell was that? What just happened? And the very next day, had some doctors come in and say, hey, we want to do there's been a bone marrow check on you. We wanted to see your bone marrow, like draw some of it and see what that says. And they explained to me what bone marrow is, and that's basically, the spice of life. That's where your immune system is that's your bone marrow is, you stop developing bone marrow after a certain age. I'm not a doctor, but, they check the bone marrow. That's going to tell you everything you need to know. So the next day I go in for the bone marrow check, and I wake up to my mother and father standing in the room, which didn't happen very often. They weren't in the same room very often, but they're standing there, and they're both fighting tears. My mom, who has an answer for everything, who knows how to get through any situation, has this look on her face that she does not know what to do. The woman that knows everything about everything has no idea has this look on her face that she does not know what the next few minutes is going to hold. And my father leans down to me, and he tells me that the reason they wanted bone marrow is because they had to, like I said, it was, basically just that would tell if they really needed something to know in an emergency situation, they checked the bone marrow to see if there's anything to tell. The doctors had been called in. There's two doctors standing behind them, Dr. Hum and Dr. K. Explains to me that these are oncologists, and that what they did find was they didn't find a single intact red blood cell in my bone marrow. That it was described as debris. So, and then that's when they told me that turns out what I came back with was leukemia. This point in my life, leukemia was just that. Those were the bald kids on commercials that said, hey, we have leukemia, you should donate to Make-A-Wish Foundation. That it was just something that I was never going to have to face. But here it was. Leukemia was a real thing, and it did exist. It wasn't some evil celebrity. It wasn't some monster that you can pray away. It wasn't something that, bad kids get and good kids avoid. And it wasn't a monster under the bed. It was something very real and very detrimental and an enemy of children. So, for some reason, I guess it just did not compute with me. And I remember thinking, okay, well, now we know what it is. So, what are we going to do? And I remember thinking, okay, I got to stay strong because because they're about to lose it. And I end up losing it. I end up falling apart. I didn't, I mean, what can you do? What can you say? How do you fix that? What does this mean for the rest of your life? Basically, it's just telling you, like I said at the beginning of the show, folks, is you're going to get faced with something, and it's going to be unique to you. You're not going to know how to deal with it. You're not going to know how to be strong through it, but you're going to deal with it, and you're going to come out the other end and then realize that you are all the stronger for it. But yeah, that's what I got for you guys today. We're going to dig into it a little bit more next week. So, be sure to check out the Court of Cows. Be sure to stay strong. Be sure to know that you are never alone. And no matter what you're going through, someone else has gone through it, going through it, or will go through it. And you will come out the better version of you on the other side. So thank you for joining me on this very first episode of Everyone Has Cancer. So that's my story so far of my battles and my wars. I hope my story helps you. Now go help someone with yours.